Guys, these are good. Like, really good. Is the KEF KC92 Subwoofer the best small subwoofer on the market? We're going to find out in this video. Hi everyone, I'm Dippin with CE Critic, and KEF sent me 2 of their KC92 subwoofers in for review. I wanted to find out how well the 88% CE Critic score held up. The score is based off of 5 available reviews at the time we're recording this video, and it comes from publications like Sound Advice, Audiophiles, Sound and Vision, Shane Lee, and Joe and Tell. Now this review, or I should really say overview, falls into my series on how much tech has changed in the last 7 years since I built my 7.2.4 home theater system. Now, right out of the gate, I think the 88% CE Critic score is spot on. There's a lot to like with these subwoofers, but there are some areas of improvement. So first, let's start with the subwoofers themselves and where they actually fall in KEF's lineup. I would put these in the 2nd or 3rd position in the KEF offering of their best subwoofer. Now, after looking at all the specs, I think I would put them in the 2nd position because even though the KEF Kube 12 MIE and the 15 MIE have larger drivers, they aren't as powerful as the KC92 subwoofer, which is going to come in at 1000 watts. Now I want to give you a little bit of background on my personal setup so you understand where I'm coming from as I'm reviewing this subwoofer. Right now in my setup, I have the KEF R400B. Now, since I've had my R400B, KEF has launched the KF92 back in November of 2019, and then they launched the KC92, which is what's in for review, in 2024. The previous generation, the KF92 subwoofer, was also well reviewed and has an 88% CE Critic score. And if you're wondering, the difference between the KF92 subwoofer and the KC92 woofer is minimal. I have the specs here on the screen, but as you can see, there wasn't a lot that was changing. I never got hands-on with the KF92 subwoofer, so I don't have a reference point there, but it had a similar 88% CE Critic score, and you can check out the scores and the reviews on cecritic.com. The main updates from the KF92 to the KC92 is KEF added the PFEX surround, which helps the 9-inch drivers resist internal air pressure while maintaining sensitivity. This helps bring down distortion in the subs. They also added a 12-volt trigger, which makes it easier for setting up in a home theater system, and they added a few more DSP settings to the back of the sub. Let's get into the full review here with 3 things I really liked about these subwoofers and 3 things I would like to see from KEF going forward. Just for reference, this is the 3rd video I'm doing on these KC92 subwoofers. My first video was all about unboxing them and getting them set up, and my second video was about stacking these subwoofers and how to do that and the best settings to make sure you optimize them in a stacked situation. I was able to test these subwoofers in 2 different ways. The first way is in the normal 7.2.4 Atmos setup, and the second setup I did was where I stacked the subwoofer, so it was a 7.1.4 Atmos setup. The room that I'm in and the room that I've set up, I purposely kept this untreated because I know it's difficult for a lot of people to get room acoustics done for themselves. They live in apartments or in smaller units, or they're just in the process of setting up their system and they haven't gotten to the stage of when they have all the right acoustical treatments in the room. So what I've done here is I've just kept it in an untreated room, normal basement that we just had finished, and I set the subwoofers in that room. Another thing that happened while I had these subwoofers in for review, Marantz sent me their AV10 processor, so I was able to test the subwoofer with my previous generation, the Marantz 7704 and the Marantz AV10 processor, and I was also able to try Dirac Live for the first time, and that was a really fun experience. So I was able to try the subwoofer with a few different settings here and a few different physical setups inside the room. Okay, now let's jump into the first thing I really like about these subwoofers, and that is they can play low and they can play loud without any distortion for both movies and music. On the music side is where the subwoofer really showed off its strength. The bass on a track like Hoist the Colors Bass Singers kept all the articulation of the low end and still hit and got very low and very deep, and it was a lot of fun to listen to that track, and it felt like it added another layer than when I had my R400Bs because these go down to 11 Hertz, where my R400s only went down to about 22 Hertz. The other track I used to test these out was The Spoils from Massive Attack, and the KC92 had no problem getting low, making the soundstage sound very big, and every time that bass hit, it really thumped inside the room, and it made my couch vibrate a little bit. Now, just so you guys know, I have an official test playlist on Qobuz. I'm one of their partners in Qobuz Society, and you can find the link in the description below on all the test tracks I use when I'm reviewing products. Now let's talk about the movie side. The first movie I always test is Blade Runner 2049 because that opening scene and that bass has become a reference point for me for anything that I test. And boy, did these subwoofers shake the room. And it was even more exciting when I was watching the scenes right at the beginning where there's I don't want to give away spoilers on I know it's a several-year-old movie, but the first fight scene and what happens in a small little hut, every single hit, every single bass impact was there. It was present. You felt the low end. You felt immediately immersed in the movie. And before I knew it, I'd forgotten anything around me and I was locked into the movie and I was just having a great time. And because these subwoofers of how low they were playing, I felt like I was very close to a movie theater experience. I also like to test the James Bond movie No Time to Die. They have an opening car sequence. I usually start that playing right when he's at the graveyard scene. I let it run through the whole car sequence. And that was so much fun with these subwoofers. Every explosion, everything that was happening on screen, you could hear it. What I really liked is the bullet scenes that as they were flying by, you could really feel the impacts. In fact, there was a few times while I was watching it, even though I know those scenes are coming and those bullet shots are coming, I still jumped when the subwoofers really showed off how low they can go and how much pressure they can add to the room and how great they sound. Now, the second thing I really like about these subwoofers is that they are stackable. And again, I did a whole video on how you can stack them. Now, this was my first time testing stacked subwoofers, and boy, did I love it. This is what I was looking for. They played so loud in my room. There was so much bass impact, so much energy, and it didn't muddy up the room a lot. I thought it would be worse, but my recommendation is if you've got small space or you've only got one subwoofer out in the room, you have to consider these so you can stack them, and you'll get a tremendous amount of performance out of these subwoofers stacked than having to try to go through a much bigger subwoofer, which might be harder to set up in the room. After I tested it out in the stack position, I did, however, go back to separating the subwoofers and putting them in two separate locations for 7.2 setup because I really like the way the room gets balanced out when you have two subwoofers in the room. So 7.1.4 was super awesome, but the way I like to listen, 7.2.4 is my happy place. Now again, and this goes to the third thing. The thing I really like about these subwoofers is the level of performance you get for their size, right? You can get a 12-inch subwoofer or 15-inch subwoofer that's going to play as low, but just how fast these subwoofers go and how low they're playing and the small footprint inside the room, I just absolutely love it. So if you're in an apartment, small room, or you're not able to put in like massive subwoofers, this to me hands down is a subwoofer everyone should be looking at. Now, like I said, I got the Marantz AV10 in halfway through, and Dirac was kind enough to set me up with a account so I can test out Dirac live, and boy, did that just turn things up a notch. Now, previously in my system, I was using Odyssey, and I'm not the biggest fan of Odyssey. I don't think it does well in my setup, and I haven't had a good experience with it. But this is my first go around with Dirac, and I absolutely loved it. It cleaned up the signal so much, and it actually helped the bass perform even better. Now, it got a really good flat response in the room, but I still went into the settings and I tweaked up the bass a little bit inside the Marantz AV10 because I like a little bit more bass in the room and I like a little bit more of that feeling inside your chest when it's available and there. Now, let me talk about the three things I would like to see from KEF going forward. I absolutely love this dual force canceling design. I think it works really well, and KEF has been really smart about the design and the way they've done the DSP. What I want to see is a larger subwoofer. I would love to see this in a 12-inch or a 15-inch, and then to me, it will probably be the best subwoofer on the market, regardless of size. And the reason I say that is because while they played low and deep and all the subwoofer was present, there were times where I really wanted to feel that slap in my chest and it just wasn't there. The only time I got it was when I stacked the subwoofers together so that it amplified the bass impact in the room. And when I did that, yeah, I felt it in my chest, everything I love to feel in a subwoofer in a home theater setup. But then that's where things start to get really, really expensive, right? Because if you get 4 of these subwoofers, because the way I like to do it is 7.2.4. So if I got 4 of these subwoofers, and these are pretty expensive, so you'll end up spending almost $10,000 just on these subs. And the way I look at it is you can get 2 SB5000 subwoofers from SVS, and they've got 15-inch drivers, and they play low and they have really great impact. So you're gonna have to weigh the cost on these subs, but if you're in a smaller room or in a condo and apartment and you have the funds, you definitely can go down that route. But I think if KEF puts these in a 12-inch or a 15-inch design, I mean, all bets are off. I think this is going to be the best subwoofer on the market. The second thing I would like to see from KEF for these subwoofers is to have the dedicated app, or even if it's built into the KEF Connect app. I downloaded that app thinking that you could do a DSP controls for the subwoofers, but it was only really for the KEF wireless series, for like the LS50 Wireless 2 or the LS60s. So you couldn't really do much with the subwoofers. The only time it works with the subwoofers is if you connect those subwoofers specifically to those speakers. Otherwise, there's no dedicated KEF app, which I think is a little bit of a miss here. I would have loved to have gone in and played around with the DSP settings a little bit more, not just the ones that are on the back of the subwoofers that you can physically click up and down. The third thing I really would have liked to see for KEF would be XLRs. For those of you who don't know, XLRs are balanced inputs. That means they have a positive signal, a negative signal, and a ground wire. And the real benefit to an XLR is it can really help reduce the noise in the signal, and you can also go longer runs. Typically anything over 20 feet, you want to start using an XLR. RCAs are great for anything under 20 feet. Some people will say even less. Now for me, in my setup, I actually have my processor in a different room. So while I didn't hit that full 20 feet, I would have loved to have an XLR as an option, because if you're putting this in a home theater system, you might have your speakers in one room and your audio equipment in another room, and having an XLR is much better than having RCA inputs only. So there you have it, guys. I think the 88% CE Critic Score again is spot on. I think KEF really nailed it, and this is probably the best small subwoofer on the market, and it makes it easy for me to recommend this. Whether you're listening to music or you need it for home theater purposes, I think it's extremely versatile in all those settings. Now, coming up next, I have the Marantz AV10 in for review. I also have the rack that I'm reviewing for the first time, which I'm really excited about. And I have a TV coming in from Samsung. I also have a really big announcement coming out in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned to the channel. So don't forget to hit subscribe, hit that bell, like and share. We also have a really good subreddit where you can have really in-depth conversations. I'm also on Instagram and on Facebook, so make sure to follow CE Critic on your platform of choice. And if you've got the KC92 subwoofer already and you love it, make sure you leave a comment down below, or go to cecritic.com and leave your own review there so everyone can see it. And I have a link down below. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.